And with that, I'll turn it over to Sean McBrearty with Clean Water Action. He is here because he's also an organizer of Oil and Water Don't Mix, and we're really excited to have him here. And let me just get the right presentation here. So I'm going to invite him up to take over, and then we'll go from there. Thanks.
Cool. Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Carrie, and thank you all for coming tonight, and the League of Women Voters for putting on this great event. So this is a bit of an abbreviated presentation tonight, so I'm just going to get right into it. The Oil and Water Don't Mix campaign began back in 2013 to shed a light on what's going on with Line 5. So far, we've really grown. We have 74 organizations who have signed on, 250 businesses, 15 tribal organizations, and we have 66 different governmental units within Michigan, counties, townships, and cities who have passed resolutions calling on the governor and attorney general to do the right thing and shut down this pipeline. So to be clear on that point, although there are a lot of things going on with Line 5 right now, the only two decision makers with the actual authority to shut down Line 5 are Governor Snyder and Attorney General Schuette. Either one of them could, at the drop of a hat, shut down Line 5 by revoking the easement that Line 5 that Enbridge has with the state because of the multiple easement violations that Enbridge has had over the past 64 years. So Line 5 itself, owned and operated by Enbridge, the folks who brought us the Kalamazoo Oil Spill back in 2010. It's a 64-year-old pipeline, goes from Superior, Wisconsin to Sarnia, Ontario, and transports Canadian oil straight through Michigan. So on its journey there, it travels through 3 national forests, the Straits of Mackinac, and 11 separate Great Lakes tributaries. They flow up to 23 million gallons of oil through the Straits pipeline every day. Now, most days out of the month, it's running light crude. About 2 or 3 days out of the month, it's running propane, which it's not running pure propane, it's running NGLs, which is a sort of liquefied version of propane with a lot of different additives in it that are used in different products. So the Coast Guard's biggest worry here is that Line 5 comes within 250 yards of Lake Michigan along US 2 in the Upper Peninsula. This is, of course, the big worry other than the Straits is this whole section where it's right along US 2 along Lake Michigan. This, according to David Schwab, who we'll be hearing from in a little bit, is the worst possible place for an oil spill in the Great Lakes, is through the Straits here. So this is just a flow showing the current changes in the Straits of Mackinac, current changes every day and a half about, and I'm sure Dr. Schwab will have a little bit more to say about the currents up there and how it would carry the oil. The worst case here, 700 miles of shoreline impacted by an oil spill in Line 5. A point on this, Enbridge makes the audacious claim that they can shut down Line 5 in 8 minutes after being able to tell there was a spill. If we look at their history back in 2010 with the Kalamazoo oil spill, they claim their response time was 11 minutes. It was really 17 hours from the time they detected a leak until they shut the pipeline down. And in the meantime, when they detected the drop in pressure in their line at their command center, instead of shutting it down because there might be a leak, they thought there was blockage, so they increased the pressure on the line, which is what caused the tremendous, disastrous size of the Kalamazoo oil spill. So, if an oil spill were to occur in the Straits, these are some of the things that would happen. The drinking water source for Mackinac Island, St. Ignace, and Alpena would all be cut off. Northern Michigan tourism, of course, would be devastated, with the Great Lakes being the big attraction. And this would damage up to 50% of the tribal fishing harvest, which has been an issue that a lot of the Northern Michigan tribes have brought up with the state so far. Federal pipeline spill incident reports show us that all steel pipelines corrode with time. Line 5 is no exception to that. We found evidence that Line 5 has corrosion, especially across the 19 separate sections of Line 5 that have coating delaminations similar to the sort of delaminations they saw on Line 6B before the Kalamazoo oil spill. To put a finer point on what the coating delaminations are, Enbridge uses a real cute term. They call it coating holidays. But what it really is 19 places in the line, so there's supposed to be 3 levels of protection between the steel of the pipeline and the current of the Straits of Mackinac. There's the steel itself. On top of that is, they used to refer to it as a coal tar sealant. They now call it an asphalt sealant. Whichever, doesn't matter in this case. On top of that is an inner fiberglass wrap and then an outer fiberglass wrap. There is evidence out there that the sections of the pipeline have these coating delaminations where you can see where the outer wrap ends, you can see where the interior fiberglass wrap ends, and you can see rust spots poking through the enamel layer, whether it's asphalt or coal tar. Again, doesn't really matter, but you can see the rust spots poking through. So this is a damaged pipeline. Another problem that they've had is failure to recognize critical flaws. Causes a lot of oil spills, including, again, line 6B. And line 5 has leaked before. A lot of these leaks go undetected by pipeline companies, or at least unreported, as is the case of one of the Enbridge leaks in the Upper Peninsula that happened in the 80s and wasn't revealed until 2012. So Enbridge has 800 oil spills between 1999 and 2010, including a total of 6 to 8 million gallons of oil spilled across all of their projects. This is a map showing the 29 separate places where oil spills have occurred on Line 5 itself. These have all been pretty small oil spills, but again, a warning that we have, this aging, old line that is not capable or safe to run through the Straits of Mackinac. So this is a little bit on the 6B rupture. It was built in 1969. So it was 41 years old when Line 6B ruptured, a little bit younger than we are with Line 5 right now. Again, claimed response time 11 minutes. The actual response took 17 hours. So the easement violations in the Straits. Big one I want to address, other than the coating delaminations, which is another violation of the easement. Unsupported pipe and spans. So there's a Detroit news story going around, a Free Press story going around the room about a recent revelation on the unsupported pipes and spans. They were able to uncover through FOIA requests that Enbridge knew as long ago as 2003 that they had 16 sections of pipeline unsupported of over 140 feet. Put that into a little more context. If you take the steel used to build the pipeline, the yield strength of the steel is about 35,000 pounds per square inch. If you don't count for any pressure added by the current of the Straits, once you get a span of about 160 feet, you're reaching the yield strength of the steel. So you're reaching a point where the steel is at serious danger of permanently deforming. The largest spans that were found in this report from 2003 were 286 feet and 224. So, well beyond the math here for keeping it open. So, another problem that we have, the exposed portion of the pipeline, you're looking at part of it here, is heavily covered in zebra mussels, which makes a detailed analysis of the coating impossible. But from what we can see from the videos that National Wildlife Federation took over the last couple dives that they did, you can see spots again where there are the coating delaminations on the pipeline. So this is a map of the pipelines with, it's hard to see on here, but the dots, the black dots on here are potential sites where the protective coating could be missing. The oil spill recovery in the Straits. Some of the interesting things learned in the Pipeline Safety Advisory Board process have been that the best case scenario for the Coast Guard is a 40% oil recovery rate. That's absolute best case scenario. To put a bit of a finer point on this, if there are huge waves in the Straits of Mackinac, anything larger than, the Coast Guard testified anything larger than 3 to 5 foot waves in the Straits of Mackinac, they would not be sending anybody out on the Straits in the event of a spill. There are 3 to 5 foot waves through the Straits of Mackinac on a pretty regular basis. So recovering 40% of the oil, you're really talking the handful of days where you have perfect conditions going through the Straits of Mackinac. Winter ice conditions make oil spill recovery even more challenging. One of the plans that they presented is not currently allowed in the Great Lakes, but they would seek to use in situ burning, which is basically where they put a big hole in the ice, light the oil on fire, and count that as part of their cleanup. Yeah. So, yes. Yes, and they can't work at night. Thank you. Oh, and the other thing that we found out was, so all the safety equipment that they should have in place in case of an oil spill is not even in state. It would take up to 24 hours for them to get all the equipment that they need in position to be able to deploy it into the straits. They're not even ready for it for a 3 to 4 hour response getting out on the water if there were perfect conditions and it happened. These are a couple of their claims and what we found out about their claims. 65%, Enbridge's first number was 85%. Even they must have thought that was too audacious. They claim 65% of the UP heat their homes with Line 5 propane. The real facts behind that is 98% of Line 5's liquefied natural gas goes straight to Sarnia, Ontario. Now, with those numbers, so that 98% doesn't directly contradict the 65% of UP propane. However, what we've found is that with the volume that they're sending that's being offloaded in the UP, it could account for at most 30 to 35% of the UP's propane supply and could be replaced by one train car or 3 tanker trucks daily. Now, obviously, in most cases, tanker trucks and trains are not the safest way to transport propane. However, from the offloading spot in the UP, that's how it's transported anyway. They, instead of offloading it in Superior, Wisconsin, which they could do with the propane, they offload it in Michigan, the 2% that gets offloaded there, and distribute from there. So this wouldn't even really be a major change in their distribution, except it would be coming from Superior, Wisconsin, and not from the UP itself. The other claim, 30% of Michigan's gasoline comes from Line 5. Fact on that, 4.4% of Michigan's gasoline comes from Line 5. The interesting fact that about 5% of the oil that flows through Line 5 actually goes to the Marathon Refinery in Detroit, which many of you are probably aware is one of the biggest air polluters in the state of Michigan. So there's another benefit to keeping Line 5 around. So polls have been showing 63% of Michigan voters think pipelines shouldn't be allowed to operate under the Great Lakes. Just another interesting thing we found out last weekend. A lot of folks were up in Petoskey for the Pipeline Safety Advisory Board meeting that they held up north. And I went up on Sunday hearing reports that with high wind conditions, a vehicle went off the bridge, or a trailer went off the bridge or something like that. I only heard a brief part of it. Then we found out that actually another thing that happened because of the high wind conditions on that random sunny, nice Sunday, one of the tankers going through the straits had to drop anchor in the straits. One of our folks called the Coast Guard to confirm the story and to see if they knew anything else about it. They don't even track that. So tankers drop their anchors in the straits all the time. The worst case scenario here is really one of those giant anchors cutting across both pipelines that run through the straits and causing a massive spill. That's something that we've just gotten lucky on for the last 64 years. The other thing is Line 5 is not on a lot of nautical maps because it's considered a national security risk to show exactly where a pipeline is that could be easily attacked. So, the state is publicly releasing a Line 5 alternative study later this month, next week. They were supposed to be releasing a risks study and an alternative study. For the past 2 years, one of the things we've been doing in the Oil and Water Don't Mix campaign is calling out the rampant conflicts of interests going on in the alternatives analysis. The alternatives analysis is being done by a company called Dynamic Risk, which has a lot of business ties with Enbridge, works on a lot of different projects with Enbridge. Now, we found out this morning that the state is canceling the risks study. They fired Del Norte Veritas, I believe a Norwegian company that they hired to do the risks analysis, citing conflicts of interest between DNV and Enbridge. Here's the interesting thing. Enbridge's Chief of Operations for the United States, Brad Shamla, is on the Pipeline Safety Advisory Board. They knew about this conflict of interest 2 years ago, so it raises a big question with us as to why they're canceling the risks study a week before it's supposed to be released publicly. There's a good chance there's something damning in that report, and that's the real reason it's being withheld by the state. We've actually today FOIA'd everything from the Attorney General's office relating to the risks analysis so that we can try to make that risks analysis public. Now, there still will be a public support or a public comment period starting on July 6th and going till August 4th on the risks, just on the alternatives analysis that is still going to be released, which is a weird thing in its own, right? I mean, the state of Michigan has a legal duty to protect the Great Lakes as a public trust. So we really ought to just be studying the risks. It's Enbridge's job to figure out how to get their product to market. We shouldn't have a role in determining an alternative. However, the state didn't see it that way. They're studying both, but now they're only releasing the alternatives. So that's what the public comment period will be on. We're also encouraging folks to go to the public comment meetings and call for full transparency with what's going on with this risk study. Because once again, there's also conflicts of interest with the alternative study. We know about the conflicts of interest in the alternative study, yet that one, for some reason, is still being released to the public, while the risk study is not. These are the 6 alternatives that they're studying: building new pipelines that don't travel through the Great Lakes, using existing pipelines elsewhere, using rail, tankers, or barges, replacing Line 5 in the States, maintaining existing Line 5 in the Straits, and decommissioning Line 5 altogether. As far as we're concerned with the Oil and Water Don't Mix campaign, the only reasonable solution here is Alternative 6, a full decommission of Line 5, before it causes more problems for Michigan here. So the studies that we're talking about, Enbridge is funding these studies, $3.6 million. So we know they're not going to be, non-biased, independent studies the way they're supposed to be anyway. Oil industry firms have been contracted. A lot of them have ties to Enbridge. Enbridge, Marathon are officially advising Governor Snyder, and the DEQ's new chief, of course, is a former BP oil executive who ran their PR department through Deepwater Horizon. So public pressure is the really, really big thing that we're going to need over this summer. During this public comment period over the next month, I'm just going to highlight the 2 events that are within driving distance of Ann Arbor in a reasonable day. The first one, the Lansing alternatives analysis, is going to be really important. 5 o'clock on Thursday, July 6th at Holt High School. And what that's going to have is the contractor, Dynamic Risk, who did the alternatives analysis, is going to be there. They're going to provide the public with an hour-long explanation of their report, followed by what we've been hearing is a Q&A with the public. So we're going to really work to stack that room. I hope everybody here can make it out to that event. The other things they're going to be holding are later in July, Monday, July 24th, 8 o'clock a.m., same location, Holt High School, is going to be a public comment meeting. And they're also holding 2 up north, one on July 24th in Traverse City, one on July 25th in St. Ignace. So after the public comment period ends on August 5th, they're doing this secondary public comment period where people will have the opportunity. So the idea is the state is making all the public comments that have been submitted available online. The second public comment period will be an opportunity for people to go through and respond to the public comments. So good opportunity again for some activism online and responding to the comments after the actual session is over. And this is the end of the presentation. This is just an artist's rendition of what it would look like from the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island in the event of a spill.
We're going to save questions.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.